Okay, great. Welcome everyone to today's share and discuss. It is an exciting day, and I really appreciate everyone who has joined the webinar. We have a wonderful speaker who I will be introducing in a short while. And before we get stuck in, I would like to give a brief background about this share and discuss, and also share a few things about the ground rules. So for those of you who are here for the first time, PhET Interactive Simulation is a project that is based at the physics department at University of Colorado. And at PhET, we create free interactive math and science simulations. And these simulations are based on extensive research, and they engage students through an intuitive game-like environment where students learn through experimentation, they explore things, they discover through experimentation. So PhET was founded by Carl Wieman in 2002, and our goal is to improve global maths and science education. And this is in line with the several targeted initiatives, one of them which is the Africa Share and Discuss webinar series. We do meet every third Wednesday of the month, and we bring together African educators, we bring together African researchers and African practitioners who use PhET simulations. They do research on PhET simulations, and they use PhET simulations in their own teaching and learning. And these amazing educators, they do share evidence-based strategies to support effective use of PhET simulations in teaching and learning. So I've already mentioned that we meet every third Wednesday of the month, and we usually meet between 4 to 5 GMT. And that can be converted into the respective time zones. We've had past editions, and we usually record these sessions so that those who are unable to attend, they can watch the videos later. So here are just examples of past editions, and if you get time, if you missed out on one of them or some of them, you can go back and be able to listen in and learn from those discussions as well. A few housekeeping rules. We are going to start, and then we will have time to address questions. So if you do have questions, please post your low questions. So if you're joining us via Facebook, we have our team members who are monitoring on Facebook. Feel free to post questions there, and also feel free to use the question and answer feature on our Zoom webinar platform. I would also like to encourage you to join our Facebook group so that you can continue the conversations after this webinar. Okay, so this evening we have a wonderful speaker who is joining us, and we are really, really grateful and excited that Professor Kakoma Luneta agreed to join us and share with us. And Professor Kakoma Luneta is an associate professor of mathematics education, childhood education. He has a PhD in maths teacher education. And in addition to that, he is editor-in-chief of the African Journal of Teacher Education and Development. So we are really excited to have you, Prof. Feel most welcome. And we'll just take it back to you so that you can share with us what you've prepared for us. So,
thank you. Good afternoon, good morning in some parts of the world, and good evening in others. I'm Luneta, like you've been told. So probably let me start by sharing what I'm going to present to you. Can everyone see it?
I guess we can see the slides. Maybe you want to put in the slideshow mode.
And that is where we start. There is so much that is, okay. Yeah, technology will always be.
Yeah, you just
don't
left there now.
Okay, let me remove, I think I need to remove these from here. I don't seem to see the slideshow mode because at the time.
So Prof, Prof, if you move your cursor up to the toolbar, you can see transitions and then animations, and then click on slideshow.
On man, how do I get? I've muted myself. I need to remove. No.
So, Prof, tell me what you see at the very top.
At the very top is the whole, let me just see if I can stop my video.
Yeah, the next.
Yeah, I've stopped my video because at the very top, what I see is the show because it is covered with participants, chats, question, and share remote control apps and so on, which were supposed to be at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, so at the bottom, there is an icon on the right of the book. You can click on that as well. Yeah, next one, click on that. Yes.
Are we in slideshow? Oh, okay.
Click slideshow.
Why is it not responding?
And do you have a second screen?
Okay, is that better?
Oh, awesome, wonderful. Yeah, there.
Okay, great. So then, like everyone has been told, I'm Luneta, and let me turn on my video so that we have an informed conversation and you see me. So our talk today, therefore, mathematics education, and basically it will be around how mathematics is taught in sub-Saharan Africa, but mainly I'll look at what are the challenges that mathematics education is facing in sub-Saharan Africa. And by doing so, then I will try and relate it to PhET programs and simulation. Now, we ought to understand I'm not an expert in simulation, and therefore I don't have much to say on that because I haven't simulated anything that I teach. So most of my conversation, therefore, will be informed by the literature that I've read and why I think it would be good for us to use simulations. Now my slides are not moving.
You can tap the forward arrow on your laptop.
Yeah, that's what the bottom arrow. It's not moving.
How about just clicking on the slide? If you click inside the slide, click.
Okay, there we are.
Awesome.
So then my talk therefore is going to hinge around mainly the paper that I've written on special challenges in mathematics education in sub-Saharan Africa, and the one that is published in some of the T1 Tier 1 journal, Current Opinion in Behavioral Sciences. In this, I was invited to conduct a systematic research and find out the pertinent challenges that are facing mathematics education in sub-Saharan Africa. And therefore, this presentation then will be related to how do we ensure that we take care of these challenges by using simulations such as the one provided by PhET. So then, the main conversation therefore should revolve around our understanding that how do I remove our pictures, because I'm not able to read because of the.
You can minimize the panel.
Minimize these. Yeah.
Just minimize the panel. And the images will get away.
Thank you. So then, I want us to understand this conversation from this point that there is substantial research and an understanding across readers of mathematics, mathematics education, and teacher training in sub-Saharan Africa that teacher knowledge is supplemented by adequate provision of support, such as appropriate professional development initiatives by states, which could be countries, provision of traditional physical classroom desks, and even old technologies such as radio, television, and chats, as well as modern physical resources such as computers and smartboards, are pivotal in achieving high learning results. This is given. This is understandable, and almost all research speaks to that. This conversation, therefore, in this webinar will revolve around one, teacher knowledge. What do we mean by teacher knowledge, and why is it so important in disseminating understanding of mathematics? And how does then institutions such as PhET SimuLation initiative, how do they support such initiatives and our understanding of how best to instruct in mathematics? So this is what our conversation is going to be about. So again, I'm not a scholar of simulation, but I had to read about it so that I have a gentlemanly understanding of what we mean by simulation. Now, some of the definitions that I found was the study of a system or its parts by manipulation of its mathematical representation or its physical model. That's one definition. So then we use therefore manipulation, from my understanding, which would be critical for teachers in sub-Saharan Africa. And again, you ought to understand there are 56 countries in Africa and 48 in sub-Saharan Africa. So when I speak to sub-Saharan Africa, I'm relating to these 48 countries. The northern African countries are in the sub-Saharan, though in my systematic analysis actually included Egypt. There was an article that I read from Egypt. So the other definition, therefore, is the imitation of a physical process of an object or a program that causes a computer to respond mathematically to data and changing conditions as though it were, as if the actual process of the item is there, as if the actual object is being seen. So that's what simulation is. And therefore, as we begin to talk about this, I would like you to have that understanding of of our view of simulation. So we should also then from the onset understand that the issues that I'm going to talk about, the problems of mathematics and issues that are pertinent to the teaching of mathematics and our children in sub-Saharan Africa learning mathematics to the point of understanding it, are not only informed by issues that are straight into mathematics, but they are informed by the education, the general education system of the continent. In actual fact, this relates to global. Now, the issues of mathematics learning, therefore, are informed by policy, and the policy really relates to what goes on into how mathematics is taught, the teachers themselves, how many teachers are employed, the conditions of teachers, and so that speaks to policy. Then the curriculum itself, is the curriculum appropriate? Does it relate to what it is that that is critical in the country and so on? The instructions, how the mathematics is taught, how mathematics is learned, and also the technology that is required to disseminate the mathematics, including the infrastructure. So all that impacts on how mathematics is learned. So then, according to the World Bank, Sub-Saharan Africa, which is the 48 countries, need to improve the performance of STEM, that is science, technology, if we are to advance, because the world is all out there to get what it is that everyone is interested in getting, that is improving education. And unless we improve the STEM, which PhET is trying to do through these simulations, we'll always be lagging behind. So that was the report from the World Bank. Now, as we continue to talk, we also ought to understand that there is evidence that when educational technology has been regarded as to have a positive effect on teaching and learning, that is given. So technology is critical. We cannot run away from it now. And also, it is true that a number of African countries are still lacking behind in physical resources, even the traditional resources of classrooms, desks, stationery, and so on. We still, a number of African countries in Sub-Saharan Africa are still struggling with that. So what then do we regard as the global understanding of the challenges? I then looked at the work that was done by Beck and others that looked at the global challenges in mathematics education. The first point that they picked up was instruction, how mathematics is being taught worldwide. And their view was that research in education, especially in mathematics education, for the next decade is going to hinge around these six areas. That is the teaching, the instruction, how to teach the subjects. Then research is going to hinge on professional development for mathematics teachers. It's also going to hinge on relations between the subject itself and the other subjects. How is mathematics related to the other subject? There's going to be research that is going to hinge on that. And the goals of education in relation to mathematics, technology will be one of the areas that will be researched a great deal in the coming decade. And also the efficacy. How do we relate to our understanding and enjoyment of mathematics? The equity. How do we ensure that everyone is catered for, despite of their economic backgrounds and so on? And assessment. How best do we assess the subject? So these will be the critical areas of research in the next coming decade. Now, in a survey, therefore, that was done by the International Union of Mathematics in 2009, and this was echoed by another survey that was done in 2021 by Evans and Acosta. The major challenges in Sub-Saharan Africa are inadequate teaching and learning materials of mathematics. Now, again, each time I'm talking about either all these, I'm relating to mathematics education. And you would realize that these actually speak to STEM, mathematics education, physics, chemistry, biology, and the engineering. So most of these really relate to that as well. The shortage of qualified and trained teachers of mathematics, especially in rural disadvantaged communities, is critical. And that is one of the major challenges. The other is ineffective assessment systems that address learners in such a way that teachers are able to understand what it is that children do not understand in their instruction. Such assessment features are not being seen out there. They are inappropriate. They are not informing the teachers as to what it is that they ought to come from the assessment. Then the teacher training programs are very fragmented. They are ill-equipped in such a way that they do not speak to the current discourses, to the current child, to the current needs of the current learner. the teacher training systems are still looking at old archaic curricula. Institutions and teacher ill-prepared to adopt new technologies as well. So while we are training teachers, we are not training them sufficiently so that they adopt to new technologies. The issues related to technology, including technological skills and use of technology and its affordances, are critical and are posing challenges. And insufficient and inadequate scientific labs or laboratories. Those are the major challenges. Now, from these challenges then, what is the research in sub-Saharan Africa looking at? Now, why this is critical, because I would like you to relate to what the research in general has found out as the major challenges and what it is that we are doing as researchers, therefore, to mitigate these challenges. You'll see that we are looking at, most of research is on learners' weak content knowledge and conceptual understanding and computational knowledge. Most of research is also looking at learners' achievement in early grades. And here, therefore, these countries that are tabulated here are the countries where I got the articles. You'd realize that there are about 555 journals in sub-Saharan Africa, with Nigeria having the largest number with about 233 journals. And South Africa has 98, then followed by Ethiopia, then South Africa, rather Ethiopia, Kenya, Ghana. And so those are the countries with the largest number of journals. And these publications, therefore, that I've picked up from here come from these journals. I made sure that the journals were predominantly from African publications and so on. So these were my findings from these various countries. Now, difficulties learners exhibit when solving mathematics tasks. This was also prominent. Student perception was also prominent. Their understanding of mathematics, how students grapple with specific concepts, where in some articles, how students grapple with fractions, for instance, how students grapple with geometry and so on. So there were various articles around that. The use of technology, quite prominent. Specific features of how to use GeoGebra, for instance, and games in enhancing understanding was also quite prominent in those countries that I've stipulated there. Learning mathematics with a disability. There were some articles that also looked at how children with disabilities are being incorporated in classrooms. Student teachers' experiences of mathematics modeling and so on. Now, if you look back at the previous slide that looked at the challenges, you'd see that these challenges most of them look at instruction, but our research is looking at the learner. So most of research that is going on in sub-Saharan Africa is looking at the product and not at the system. So there's very little research that is looking at how are teachers engaging with the learners and what are the difficulties that are in this. Now, worse still, there's extremely little research that is engaging with the teacher trainers, such as universities and colleges, teacher training colleges. How are they training teachers so that they're able to disseminate the teaching and learning of mathematics in the classroom? Very little. Most of research is predominantly on the learners, and these are being researched on how they understand the concepts. So, therefore, there has been, again, I can't read what the title is, research that is looked at what are the interventions then in our understanding of the difficulties that the teaching of mathematics is experiencing. What are the various interventions that have been identified that could inform instruction? So I looked at a summary of 12 international research reports. And these indicated that student monitoring progress was critical. Good needs analysis of students' knowledge gaps was critical. Use of explicit systematic teaching was critical. Assurance of teacher knowledge and content knowledge was critical, and intervention strategies supported by schools was critical, and also use of technology. So you'd see that the interventions seem to speak to instruction, to the teaching, what goes on in the class, they speak to the teacher, but our research is hinging on the learner. So there is that lack of marriage between these three constructs. So then, excuse me. I'm trying to see how do I remove that title there, because I can't read what's right on the top. Knowledge gaps. Can anyone read to me what is on top there? What has...
So the title on the slide.
Yeah, just the title.
What has hampered implementation?
Oh, yes, what has happened? Interventions, thank you. So then, now there has been these interventions that have taken place, but most of them are done by NGOs. They are carried out by NGOs that fund particular institutions to carry out these interventions and so on. But then why haven't they been haven't they ensured that there's effective learning in mathematics? Now, some of the reasons are screening learners and teachers' needs does not marry with what is actually supposed to be done. There's very little time between what we identify as the issues that the teachers and the learners are grappling with and the intervention that we provide. There's a time lag in there. In other words, we identify that teachers in such and such a place are grappling with how best to probably document measurements with the learners, how best to teach measurements. And it takes us a year to address these teachers and have professional development programs that support that. So there's that time lag. Also, the gap knowledge not easily and timelessly documented and addressed. So when we identify this gap that has been identified, the interventions and the professional development programs that are provided take longer to address them. There's also issues of which teachers have a feeling and a view that these children cannot learn mathematics. They are incapable of learning mathematics. And that kind of stereotype is being picked up, that as teachers, as instructors, there is that element of thinking that in actual fact, children cannot learn mathematics, therefore we don't put in much effort. The professional development programs that are being provided are inappropriate and ineffective. And lack of integration of technology and teaching. And this is where now simulation comes in. There is lack of that. In other words, while we have conceptual understanding of specific content that ought to be taught, but we do not have sufficient technology, or we don't have the technology that informs us as to how best we can use it in order to inform effective instruction. And there is also a digital divide, which is being found to be a major hindrance especially to learning and to e-learning. And it is basically important to note that this digital divide has therefore alienated learners from disadvantaged communities. So learners that are in disadvantaged communities, in rural communities, while the learners in towns, for instance, and in cities and in developed countries are being enhanced by technology, the learners in these communities are being alienated even more by technology. So while technology is good, it appears like it is not reaching everyone. And again, I always like to share this because I'm looking at time. These are some of the pictures that I take that speak to our understanding of mathematics and why it is important that teachers' knowledge of mathematics, their content knowledge is strong. And once their content knowledge is strong, then it becomes easy to identify what sort of simulation activities can inform particular constructs. For instance, this is just a picture that I took in a game reserve. And from here, I was able to identify the mathematics that can be taught from primary school, parallel lines and so on, all the way up to university, dealing with volume of a cone and so on, and the volume of that. And you can use that to teach economics, the amount of grass that is required and costings and so on from what is provided there. This is another picture that I took of Mrs. Muhlanga that also speaks to mathematics, and I regard her as a mathematician, actually. And also I took this in Tanzania at one time at a market, the mathematical knowledge that is displayed by the carpenters. But my point here is that unless you have, it's not easy for you to see the mathematics in your community. You ought to be able to realize and look at something and realize, oh my goodness me, the amount of mathematics that is in there. I have one story. A few days ago, I met a lady who was selling items by the roadside, and I went down my window and said, oh, I would like to buy some of that. Then she said, oh, yes, surely I can. How much do you? And I gave her the money. And I said, oh, that is very good mathematics. When she gave me the change, she said, no, mathematics. I never did mathematics. I don't like it. I never liked it at school. What she doesn't realize is that her addition and subtraction is a lot of mathematics. And this is what I'm relating to here. And this is Mrs. Muhlanga, whose work I've used, and those are the baskets. And you realize that for her to make these patterns, she has to have an understanding of mathematics, not in the way you and I talk about parallel lines, but she has knowledge of parallel lines. She has to have those patterns that they display there. So then I would like to invite you to the journal, the African Journal of Teacher Education and Development. I started this journal, I started talking to publishers almost for the past 5 years. But last year we started the journal. I have put in a board together, and we have our first publication last year, and we're inviting manuscripts from around the world. Our first publication last year, we had manuscripts from articles from Australia, the Netherlands, Norway, one article from the US. And so I'm inviting all of you that are here to send your manuscripts. And you go to ajoted.org if you can read that. That's what the journal is about. We have special sections for mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology, and other sections also just for teacher education, predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa. The reason again being, there are very few. The 555 journals that are online on Africa Online that I've talked about still do not cater for STEM. If you look at STEM, there are only 2 journals on those 500 plus journals that cater for STEM. And even among those, there's only 1 journal that speaks to mathematics, which is Pythagoras. So here's a platform for you. And that's what we look at. It's a peer-reviewed journal that looks at, so all your work will be peer-reviewed. So that's it, really. Thank you very much for listening. We can have some conversation. So
Thank you.
Should I stop sharing now?
Yes, if you can.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Kakoma, for that insightful presentation. you have began by sharing about the challenges around maths education, existing challenges from lack of, like teacher content knowledge and poor instructional approaches. And then you moved on to talking about the various interventions that happen on the continent and where the disconnect is, and how some of the ineffective professional development opportunities are inappropriate for the continent. And then you've shared about how valuable teacher content knowledge is important, how pedagogy is important, and how classroom instruction is important. And finally, you've shared about the opportunity about to have questions. I would suggest that if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat box or in the Q&A section, so that Prof can address them. I have one question, Prof, and it relates to like the pedagogy and content knowledge of our teachers. Now, students from different African countries, be it Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Gambia, wherever African country, always complain about teachers making STEM subjects like math or physics to look very, very scary. And it's one of the reasons why the uptake of this STEM subject in Africa is very low. What is your suggestion of how we can change this narrative?
Okay, we start with you. The third program, I think, after having gone through your program, is important. Why? It always speaks to teachers' content knowledge. When teachers understand what it is that they are teaching, they become very comfortable to disseminate that information. They provide examples like Mrs. Muklanga's work. You can bring that into class and teach a calculus on that. When you are teaching calculus in Form 5 or Form 6 or Grade 12 class, you can bring that work and show children, learners, how that is related to mathematics. That's how you make mathematics interesting. So to answer your question, therefore, it's the content knowledge of the mathematics teacher that is critical. Anything that you understand very well, it becomes easier for you to talk about it. You can mathematics. Will fear mathematics, will not have a good understanding of mathematics. Why? Because I'm not teaching it effectively. The reason being my content knowledge is weak. So until we ensure that our teachers have good understanding of mathematics, it is always going to be a case where children in STEM are scared to join STEM, to be in a physics, chemistry, biology, and engineering class.
Great. Please type your questions for Prof in your in the chat box or in the Q&A section. If you have questions about what he has shared or any question that is related to what he has presented, please feel free to type the questions in the chat box or raise your hand. We can unmute you and you can be able to ask your question. So, Prof, just another question about teacher professional development. So, across the continent, teacher professional development occurs, but from some of the researchers that you've mentioned, it is inappropriate. What should we do?
Very good question. Very good question. You see, like I said, most of these professional development programs are funded, are donor funded. Now, as long as they are donor funded, therefore there's a timeline. We shall fund this for 2 years, for 1 year, if you are lucky. In most cases, it's 6 months. Now, until the governments, the African governments, take professional development programs for teachers as part of the curriculum, such that they are ongoing and that they just don't happen once a month, or they don't happen once a year and so on. It's an ongoing program and not something that is just left to NGOs. They'll always be weak. So the governments, therefore, and this has happened in a number of developed countries like Singapore and so on, government takes that as part of the curriculum. Every teacher undergoes a specific professional development program as they go on. I mean, it's a requirement worldwide in other professions, to ensure that you are in service all the time. And that's what teacher professional development programs are all about.
Hello, hi, Anselm. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Concerning what Prof talked about in terms of trained teachers versus untrained teachers, I noticed that a lot of untrained teachers who manage mostly the private schools, which are the places that we even have people doing very, very well in mathematics and science, as compared to the government schools. So it's like it's mandatory for you to follow. You dare not move out of it, and it's like you are controlled. So even when you have something like you have something interesting that you think you can chip in to make the class so exciting, to have that kind of picture of the lessons you are teaching, but you are so guided that you may not be able to. And I noticed that most of the teachers and most of our Ghanaian teachers are like, the things they were taught and how they were taught, they do not have any enthusiasm. They do not do any research, nothing. They just focus on the things they learned, and anything that you try to bring up that challenges, even theories that they were taught, that's not how it is. They have no idea about those things, and they are not looking forward to expanding their knowledge in research. So it's very, very, personally, it's disheartening. I am not a science student. I didn't do science, but the interest is there. But I can't get through because like I do not have any formal training, and I don't have anybody that I can get to assist me to master how to, or in what way I can impact on science and technology in my country. It's kind of heartbreaking anyway.
Okay.
But that's it.
Thank you very much for your point. I'm not so sure whether to take it as a statement or a question, but I will address it in both ways. You see, the private institutions, that's why they are private, they're in business. Therefore, they ensure that if you are a teacher, you must teach well. There is a proper monitoring system that is laid down compared to government institutions. So in private institutions, therefore, why they do better is because it's a business. It's run like a business. They ensure that teachers prepare for their lessons. They ensure that teachers turn up on time. All these important issues that ought to be put in place in order for effective instruction and learning to take place they ensure that they take place. Whereas in government schools, the monitoring system is quite weak in a number of them.
Yeah.
People would turn up late and they're not reprimanded. If somebody doesn't teach properly, no one sits in to to interrogate them and so on. For instance, I'll give you one example here in South Africa. An inspector of education cannot just walk into a school and observe a teacher. No, the unions would crucify him. So the teachers feel shelled in, feel protected, and therefore they can do as they like. Of course, there are some really good teachers out there. But what I'm trying to say is that private institutions are very well managed in most cases. Why? Because they're business entities compared to government schools and so on. Teachers will be absent and nothing happens. So what you're saying, why government schools do well, therefore, it's because, yes, indeed, they have to be there. They have to teach, they have to follow the curriculum, they have to make sure that they turn up for work, they have to ensure that assessments are done and the marking of the learner's work is done on time and feedback is provided. This is what is lacking in a number of government schools.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.
Very much. Yeah. But also most of our teachers are more like they are into the job because of the money, but not because of enthusiasm. They're just teachers because they want to be teachers. No enthusiasm, no creativity, no research. Just what they were meant to teach. That's all.
Okay.
Great comment there. Alphys Dube, I've allowed you to talk, so you can go ahead and.
Thank you very much, Zach. Just to add on to Prof, I would like to think, private schools are also better resourced. For instance, when we talk in terms of, technology, technological resources, if you to actually take rounds around the private schools, you would find that they are much way ahead compared to, our government schools, Just an addition, I raised a question on the chat box to Prof. I just want to get some, ideas on how we can link ICT as we know it to the 4IR.
Okay. You have to understand 4IR as what as a field, and Alphys is actually my doctoral student, and his study actually looks at technologies that are used by teachers in schools. Now, 4IR is critical. It has both its advantages and disadvantages, and the major disadvantage is the point that I've looked at, that in a number of sub-Sahara schools, many of them are still grappling with the third industrial revolution. Forget the fourth, They're still grappling with the third industrial revolution. Provision of proper, adequate communication is still lacking. But those that have, that's why institutions such as PhET is critical, because then you can go onto their website and see how best you can use some of what they have provided in your mathematics, in your physics, in your chemistry, and in your biology classrooms. So that's where 4IR comes in. I can sit in a village somewhere and still be able to access information, to access instruction. So that's the critical nature of it. But the other point is that there has got to be training. Teachers ought to be trained on how to use what is provided there. Because you can provide me with the best car in town. If I don't know how to drive, I can assure you I'm not going to reach where you want me to. So you can provide me with the best technology, for sure. But if I do not know how to use it, it's useless. So we ought to train the teachers that are going to use this technology. And governments, therefore, in sub-Saharan Africa ought to take that up. So in the curriculum, there has got to be sufficient money. And that's where I talked about policy. There has got to be sufficient money for professional development programs for teachers in STEM to understand how best they can use technology in order to enhance instruction and enhance learning.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Great. Gianna has a comment in the chat box, and Gianna says, I think prospective teachers should become content experts, and that should be the job of the teachers training colleges. Any comment on that, Prof?
Oh, that's given. That's given, and I'm glad for that emphasis, because content knowledge is critical in any given sphere. Once you have the content knowledge, then it becomes easier for you to disseminate the content. If you are an expert in that particular content that you're going to teach, it becomes easier to teach it as well. It becomes easier for you to see Mrs. Mhlanga seated there with her work, and you realize, oh my goodness me, I can use that in the classroom. That is only possible if you are grounded in your content. Your understanding of concepts in physics and chemistry, if they're clear, it becomes much easier for you to identify, oh no, let me use this simulation actually to be able to enhance this understanding. Oh no, this one I think it's a little hazy, or it's a little too difficult for my learners. Let me use, you are only able to do that if your content knowledge of physics, chemistry, and mathematics is good. So yes, I agree with that.
Awesome. Yeah, so maybe just one last question, and then I can highlight a few teacher professional development opportunities that PhET is providing. So the last question to you, Prof, is what do you presume the mathematics education sector or STEM education sector will look like in Africa in the next 20 years?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Look, until we address effective teacher training, there'll be very little difference between how it looks like now and how it will look in 20 years. In other words, we must inform our governments to invest in effective teacher training programs in universities, in teacher training colleges. That way, there will be a shift in the types of teachers that we produce in the next 10 to 20 years. As long as we continue with, and again, let's expose this. There's a lot of corruption in a number of sub-Saharan African countries. As long as we don't invest in education, in the training, and again, by investing in education means you are going to have sufficient money allocated to universities, sufficient money allocated to teacher training institutions for research and so on. As long as we do not do that, but pocket that money, and what is going to happen is that we are going to perpetuate this. The African child will always be in the periphery. So to answer your question, therefore, is indeed, if our governments are going to change, if our governments are going to invest a lot in teacher training, in teacher education, and in professional development in schools, and in the training of teachers in institutions, there's going to be a shift. If this remains as it is now, we are going to sit back, God bless us, in the next 20 years, sit in a meeting like this and still be able to be talking about the same issue of ineffective instruction, ineffective training of teachers, shortcuts in teacher training programs, where we think we can produce an effective teacher in a year. Such does not work.
Thank you so much, Prof. That is very insightful, and thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. I think in the interest of time, we are going to stop that conversation, but we can always continue the conversation on our Facebook page, and you can also reach out directly to Prof and ask him questions and engage with him. I want to highlight two important opportunities that are related to what Prof has shared. And the first one is about the PhET Fellowship. And I am just dropping a link in the chat box so that you can grab it and have a look at it. And it's an opportunity for educators, for maths teachers, chemistry educators, across physics, teachers, biology teachers, across all the academic levels, to be part of the leadership that will change the narrative for Africa in terms of effective use of PhET simulations and other technologies, embedding pedagogies, and also empowering other teachers to be able to use these, useful pedagogies. So that PhET fellowship is open, and the deadline for the application is 1st of March. Please go through that document, encourage other teachers, other professors to have a look at the opportunity and make an application. The second sort of opportunity that I would like to share is the teacher professional development opportunity. So PhET has developed self-paced professional development courses on Coursera. And the first one is called Introduction to PhET Simulation for STEM Education. And what this really seeks to do is to help educators to be able to identify what simulation is relevant to their learning objectives and what whole class strategies can they use to teach with the simulations. It involves like reading, watching videos, doing activities, engaging in discussions with other educators. So I would like to invite you to just have a look at the course and, if possible, take the course. The second one is activity design with PhET simulations. Again, this is on Coursera, and this is about you as an educator developing strategies for writing sim-based inquiry activities for science teaching and for math teaching. So you're given an opportunity to develop a lesson and then try it in classroom and then see what is working. And then the last one is implementation of the PhET activities for STEM education. And again, this helps you to implement the sim-based activities that you've developed, and then you reflect on it, and then you are able to course correct and improve, and also share with other. It's free. We can, if you have like, a good number of teachers, we can organize this course so that we have a private session, and then teachers, educators can go through the course and be able to do the course and learn and share and engage. So those are the two opportunities that I want to share from PhET. And once again, I would like to appreciate Prof for making the time to share that insightful presentation that he has shared with us. And also just to thank everyone for creating the time. I know everyone is busy, but you made the time to join us in this session, and very wonderful questions to Prof. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I would suggest that we keep the conversations going through our Facebook page and also through our other social media platforms, as well as reaching to us directly. So I would like us to stop there and wish everyone a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm very thankful.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the part of the world. Thank you. I hope you take advantage of this and engage with PhET. I think they have fantastic programs for teachers. Yeah. Bye-bye then.